looks happy, well fed, drinks in hand. So thank you all for coming to the QASIG tonight. We appreciate it. Tonight we're having a series of lightning talks. Our lead-off speaker, Zephan, shall be going first. Zephan, the floor is yours.
All right, wow. With that lightning introduction, I'll see how quickly I can get through sort of recapping the longer presentation I gave about test tools and test tool management. So if anybody's interested in the big spiel, initial big spiel, go look up testing like Batman on the web. You'll find a couple of references. That's what this is a follow-up to. In general, I'm going to recap. I feel like I'm giving away the answer right at the beginning of this one because I led up to this during my first presentation. The most important tool you have in a tester's toolbox is your mind. Everything else is optional. If the only thing you have is the application and Notepad, you're going to find a way to use Notepad to test the application or figure out how to test the application. Or if you just have the OS, well, you'll find some tools built into the OS. Or, whatever. So your mind is required, everything else is optional. Keep that in mind, you'll find the right tools. The other thing to know is there are a mess load of tools that you can use to support testing. And for this discussion, I think of a tool as software that helps you test other software. There are much broader definitions of tools. You can even use processes as another way of doing it. But I'm getting too much into the initial stuff. So back when I did my initial mind map, sort of categorizing what sort of tools were available, I had quite a few. And this was in March. I also put up a whole bunch of stickies around here and had everybody write down their favorite tool. And we did an exercise where we sort of categorized and came up with an organic list of additional tools. So I spent some time with all of those nice stickies that everybody was so helpful in putting on me. And I updated the map. So if you take a look at the initial map, it's yay big. With all of those stickies incorporated in a couple of new ideas, there's quite a bit more in here. So, 50% more in a couple of new categories. I'll just point out a couple of things here. Now, this is a presentation that's put up, so you can go take a look at this yourself. Click on this link, and you'll get right to software testing tools. And this is the test tool map. So I'm going to go to full screen. Not quite as easy as when you bring it up in Xmind, but I don't think I have the time to do that right now. So it's kind of the two things that you really need to start with when you're picking out tools to test any particular application, is to know what it is you're going to test. What's my product? What do I have access to, and so forth? What's my context? In fact, I'm going to put a 0 in here that says what sort of processes do I have to work with if I'm in a regulatory environment that may limit or alter what sort of tools I can use. So keep that in mind above even the product level requirements and information. After that, find some tool lists and repositories. Here's the software testing portal on Wikipedia. Excellent place. It's got a huge list. And Scott Hanselman's Ultimate Tool List, also highly recommended by me and a few other folks. You can find all sorts of tools that can help you test. Even this mind map can help you select out some tools. And then after that, you're going to sort of put together some test collateral, and here's some different ways of looking at that. And some test training information, generating some test ideas, including mind mapping. This is using Xmind, by the way, a tool that helps you create a mind map. So you can categorize or make relationships to different ideas. lots and lots of text tools. I don't have time to go through everything in here, but I will point out this is incomplete, completely incomplete, and it will be outdated, like as of before I created it. This is to give people a sort of an overview, an image, an idea of the types of tools that are available and sort of the categorizations or one way to categorize them. It's not even the right way to categorize them. There is no right way. If you know of a better way to categorize them, please message me. So you can even see here, I've got under text tools, data generators. Can everybody read? Yeah.
No.
No?
That's all right.
Move to the front row.
Zephan, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Where can I find this?
So there's some notes, slides that are with the lightning talks, and this is one of the links in my slides, just like how I got here. And I'll follow up after with you and anybody else that wants, and make sure you have my contact info, which is in my last slide.
It's on your site, right?
Hmm?
It's on your site?
Yes. Yes. QASIG.org.
Yep.
Should get you to this whole lightning talk thing. So, for example, data generators, you can go to doing like a custom or coded, scripted text tool of your own making, which takes you ... over to automation test scripts. And you could be creating that with PowerShell. And then here's some specific tools for developing PowerShell. PowerGUI is really deep, heavyweight sort of thing. PowerShell ISE, that one actually comes baked in to the OS if you're on Windows 7 or later, or Windows 2008 server, maybe 2008 R2 server or later. So, again, this is a loose coupling with just a few arrows showing the nature of how these test categories or test tools can cross from one side to another. Everybody should have a really good full-featured text editor because it allows you to do everything from syntax highlighting, so you can see the differences between different blocks of stuff, to actually doing diffing between two text files and say, okay, this looks slightly different here, and it's highlighted it for me because it's a text tool that knows how to deal with text. So, I've just covered a fraction of this. Anybody have any questions so far, or things that you find particularly interesting in terms of test categories or specific test tools? All right. I'll take silence as an answer to continue, because this is a lightning talk. I don't have a whole lot of time to make people feel uncomfortable enough to raise their hand. Maybe later. All right. So, Xmind does another neat thing, which is, in addition to publishing very easily, it also takes my whole thing here and breaks it down into a outline. And anywhere that I've actually assigned a link, oh look, website testing, list of web testing tools. Okay, I'm gonna force some interaction here. We're going to either look at the list of GUI testing tools or the list of web testing tools. Who wants GUI? We've got 2 for GUI. Who wants web service? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, many. I can't count that high. So, off we go. Control click there. And Wikipedia. List of web testing tools. My gosh, where have you been all my life? You go digging around trying to find the best tool, only to find that Wikipedia, somebody had the same conundrum and said, oh look, here's all these tools. Why don't I just document all of them, what their features are, and you have this great comparison. So this is wonderful stuff on Wikipedia. Use it. It even gives you references and links to the sites so you can kind of figure out when was this thing, a lot of them even say when it was last created or last updated, or did it get retired?
Great if it had the price on there too.
Yeah, some of them have the price. It took me a little while. Somebody had mentioned a tool called, wait for it, wait, yeah, I caught you. Here we go. So under website testing tools, Selenium, well, some other tools are based off of Selenium. One of them is STIQ. And when I went to the website for STIQ, it said, page not found. Turns out that Solutions IQ used to host it until about 2009, and then as a project it died or stalled. And so I was able to find enough information there to say, oh gosh, maybe I don't want to rely on that too much because it's unsupported. Really, really unsupported. But I did find the source code, so if I really needed what it offered, I could go and use that tool. But it's about picking the tools that are right for your situation. If you had to build the same exact thing on your own, start with that. But if you can find something more supported, that's usually the better way to go first. All right, so wrapping up with presentation stuff. Like I said, I took feedback from everybody in my initial meeting. I'm also going to leave some stickies in the back. If you have a favorite test tool, and I hope you all do, some tool that you like using the most, I want you to write it on the sticky notes on the back here before you leave. Just one tool that you love. Write it down. I'll make sure it's on the list. I'll also make sure I know enough about it to talk intelligibly about it. And that'll add. So lessons learned, the tools are constantly being created and evolving and dying off, like I mentioned. So keep an idea of where to find lists and where to find pointers to the latest tools. Or do a whole bunch of research on your own and help contribute. Hey, Wikipedia, if you know more about a tool than anybody else, help me. Post it there. So tool lists are very important. Favorite tools that have a strong community history and a support track record, especially if you plan to be using that tool for a long time, because once you pick a tool, it's usually very hard to switch. And if nothing fits, then consider contributing to an open source project. All right, questions, feedback? Here's my contact information. I'm now taking questions.
You had a new category of test groups.
Yes, 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 yes. I didn't even get a chance to show it. But some people had mentioned, UTest, for example. It's not really a tool. It's a vendor. UTest is now, all right, somebody help me. What did UTest become?
Applause.
Applause. Thank you. So Applause is a service where they basically crowdsource testing. They have all sorts of people that have various mobile devices and Android phones and computers and Linux.
That's my talk.
Awesome. So that's one group, support groups. I think QASIG actually qualifies as what that. Forums, Stack Overflow. These are all communities where you can use them and use the collective knowledge to help as a testing tool. It's a little bit of a stretch on tool, but went for that. Other questions? Ideas, things that should be or should not be?
I was going to ask about the concept of automation and just where you take on that. Is it a tool or something more, or is it
It's a category.
A scrum of scrums? Okay. So
Yeah, is it a process? Is it a methodology?
Right.
What is it?
What
It's
was
a
your findings when
category.
you're digging into that, how it lined up?
There's like 4 different ways at least that you can slice and dice automation. For this presentation, I slice it in the form of a category.
Okay.
There are lots of specific software that tests that help you test other software. Specific software packages that fall under that category of automation.
Okay.
And the difference between automation and code quality, which was a new separate category, static code analysis is sort of a testing tool. It reads through the source code, but it's not automation. So code, code that looks at other source code, that's code quality.
Okay.
Whereas automation is usually a runtime driven thing.
Okay.
All right.
Zephan, thank you very much. That was great. And Zephan did such a great job of leading into our next speaker. Kevin, Kevin, take it away.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Kevin Klienmeier, and I'll try to talk and load up my slides at the same time.
I'm working with a company called Z-Crowd, and we're all about how to do crowdsourcing, but skilled crowdsourcing. A lot of the crowdsourcing that's out there right now is kind of a race to the bottom. We think we can do better than that. And that's what I'm interested in. Other thing that I want to let you know about is I got accepted just to give a talk on low-tech ATDD at the QASIG. It's coming up in Portland in October, so this is not that talk, but come to that. It's going to be lots of fun. So this is about testing on devices, especially ones you don't want to own. What's the problem here? This is the problem. This is OpenSignal's device fragmentation report for 2013. There are 11,868 unique kinds of Android devices that all have to work for your product. And then there's a company in Cupertino that makes some other stuff as well, in addition to Android. So, great. What do we need to do this testing? Phones. Lots of phones. What would you even do if you had 11,000 phones in your testing department in big racks that zoomed at you when you came in dressed in leather? That might not be good news depending on your physique and your leather or your racks or even the environment. And so what we do today is we pick some and we own some, and then they're not enough. Like, no matter what subsection of that 11,000 phones you choose, it's wrong. Whether it's because we get a new client that has new needs, or there's a client whose CEO has an obscure phone, and now that one's really important, even though it wasn't important before. This is stuff that happens. Great. Here's an approach to testing it. Don't. We'll figure it out. We'll get bug reports and we'll respond to it quickly. This also has some drawbacks, which leads people to ask this kind of question of, maybe we should test that before release. So what are we going to do about that? Well, it turns out there are 300 million phone users in the United States. Or said another way, of all of those 11,000 distinct phones that are in the market, somebody owns every one of those. Several somebodies, in fact. And if you have international problems, your solution gets better. There are 6.8 billion phones in the world. So there are some companies out there.
Most of those are dumb phones.
No, possibly. But sometimes the problems that we're testing are SMS reception that even work with those dumb phones. So you're right, but there's still testing to be done on a lot of those. So there are companies out there, like Applause, thanks for that good intro, who are asking the question of those 300 million people in the United States, those 6.8 billion people in the world, does anybody want $1? That's the question that they're asking them of, you've got one of these phones, and we have a testing activity that's, and this is the tricky part that I'll get to, that's pretty small. Will you just try this out and tell me if it works, and send us the results? And that gets me off the hook for having to build a matrix in order to store all of my telephones. And it allows us to get access to those when we need it. So that's the idea here of crowdsourcing this need for all of these devices. How does it work? Applause has, and this isn't an endorsement of Applause. I don't even know those guys. They seem cool, but there's a couple out there. There's Mob for Hire is the other one. I think they have a better name. They'll send the family over to do your testing. We'll test it, no problem. But so how these generally work is they manage this crowd of folks nationally, internationally, and you provide to them your software builds or URL if it's just a web kind of thing, some test definition, which of those 11,000 things would you like to test on and pay for, of course. You send that to them, that's part of the relationship. They farm it out across that organization, and you get back those bug reports, the usage metrics, and the actual coverage, how many people were on each phone, and that sort of thing. And so your company is able to leverage that crowd. This is a real thing that's out there. Now, it has some drawbacks, right? It's not one of these, a silver bullet. You might be thinking to yourself, how do I get my Android app onto somebody's phone in Pakistan? That sounds challenging, and it's part of the problem. And we mentioned automated testing, just a little bit ago, we asked about it, there's Selenium. There's still this concept in the application itself of design for testability. We may, in fact, need to design our applications for crowdsourceability. So we need to design it into a small component. I don't want to release the whole app to this user in Pakistan. It will blow their minds. I want them to do this small subset of that app. So I need to make that into a component that I can reliably repackage later. It gets more challenging on the Apple framework because it's more challenging to install applications for Apple. Some of it is managed by Applause and those members in having their own content channels to them. That means that we may have to change our build structure to feed into that and get those reports back. It also still has a place for smart people in testing. We have to break down the big testing effort of, does this whole app work? I can't just throw the whole app out and say, okay, crowd of people in the world, test it, because they're going to get this far into it and do a bad job of it. They need somebody who really understands testing to be able to define what the micro tasks are in order to get help on that, in order to allow that crowd to be helpful and useful. So that's how you might be involved in that as professionals in testing. This doesn't replace you, just like, remember the fear of little automated tests are going to replace testers. That didn't happen. If you remember, and we've heard this story, like we're going to replace this whole group of folks for a long time, right? Who remembers the object-oriented revolution? We were business people, like everybody was going to be out of a job. Business people were going to go to the object store, like objects are us, and buy objects and wire them together. That didn't happen either. And we're in that same place here. It's going to change how we do our work. It's going to make us more effective at it. And it's going to let us deal with some of these problems that are showing up. So what's next? I want to talk about this in two pieces. One is there's a problem that's coming for us that's related to this that's even worse. So the way that we're solving this problem today without using the crowd is owning kind of enough devices. You've got an iPad and a couple of Android devices. It gets worse. Smart cars, not the little ones. You know, applications for cars. Now you need to own a handful of cars. Ooh, that's not going to come out well. That's going to blow our QA budget right out of the water. And there are more variables than I've shared here. Has anybody ever had a problem that was only on one carrier network? It works differently on AT&T than it does in Verizon. It works differently in Montana for some reason that I cannot figure out. Or if you have to support a truly international problem, then it gets even bigger. So in thinking about crowdsourcing, and this is Kevin Klienmeier's thought on application adoption in the world. It goes through three waves. The first wave is the obvious stuff, and this is what happened with crowdsourcing generally, is we already want to ask questions to people, surveys, marketing research, usability testing. Now we've got a better way to ask questions to people. Okay, that's the first wave. The second wave is what I think we're entering right now. Bigger waves. So stuff that we knew was a problem, but we didn't even try to solve with outsourcing, which is crowdsourcing is outsourcing with crowd, right? That's the etymology of the word. Device testing, network testing, location testing, internationalization maybe is in the first one because we were kind of outsourcing that anyway. We can put that to the crowd. But what I want to end up with is, what is the third wave? The third wave looks like this. It changes everything. And this is solving problems we didn't even think to solve with crowdsourcing. And that's what I want to hear, especially if you have questions, I'm ready to answer them. But this is what I want to hear from you of, what are problems that you wouldn't even think to use this for initially, but maybe a year from now, this will be the way that we solve it. So lots of things like smartphones. I do all kinds of things with this that the original Apple never even imagined. So that's what I want to go for.
Well, beyond cars, there's what's called the Internet of Things now. They do personal metrics on all sorts of devices. And
got to test that thermostat. And the thermostat in Phoenix behaves a lot differently than it does here in Seattle, doesn't it?
Which power company you hooked it up to.
Yeah.
I've got one you won't solve. Medical. So like diabetic, blood pressure, anything on devices that track that kind of stuff, getting the HIPAA barrier out of that, saying, why don't you sign up and do that? I mean, sure, we might be able to get away with a legalism saying you're signing your life away if you give me access to this, but that's gonna diminish
What's
your
HIPAA
tool.
stand for?
Huh?
What privacy stuff?
Right. Health
information,
unfortunately,
health
privacy.
information.
Yeah,
Privacy
it
appropriate.
gets a lot easier when it's not personally identifiable.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's part of what this crowd helps out with. So in brainstorming sessions, so I've got, 40 minutes of conversation here to share, but in thinking about what is a hard problem or a bad idea, here, taking information, this is, would you share the data, anonymized data from your insulin pump, so that we can now plug that into a simulation of, here's what the old version of the software did in all of these cases with this set of inputs. What would the new software do with that?
So you're taking only one piece of that data set that's not.
Right. We don't have anybody's name on it or anything like that.
If the final product does track that and tie it to a service where they have HIPAA-controlled storage of your personal information because it's for a medical industry, which I work as part of for Philips Healthcare, then what you would want is the pre-release that's being crowdsourced. Again, you'd need to componentize to have a module that where you actually design it for the testability, where you can decouple the personal information there. And so now that person is now patient X, and there's no way to tie patient X to that particular person. So,
So you've got to design the data feed.
but
so
that
it doesn't
required
confuse
instrumentation or an additional module for the debugger pre-release builds.
Yeah.
So a question I had was, like on Applause, how do they generate do you happen to know how they generate scenarios out to the users that are crowdsourcing things? Or do they have that level of support? That you can say, oh, okay, here are 15 scenarios that we'd like you to try out.
Yeah, you can specify the test plan or scenarios you want them to execute.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's that side. The other side is you can you can use logging and actually interpret what they're doing. It's sometimes even more valid than a test plan because you're finding out how it's used.
And also what steps the user
And that's-
did before it blew up.
Well, I think the reason you want scenarios is his thin coverage.
Oh, right.
If you don't ask people to do this list of things,
Right.
then you don't get the coverage.
Yeah, you don't know what
Right.
coverage you got.
And there's a lot of categories in here. If you go to Applause or UTest website, they talk about the difference between functional testing, which is kind of what I focused on, is does this work, versus usability testing. Can you get this thing done? Or if I ask you to do this task, do you use this feature that I worked really hard to build for you that you didn't notice was a button on the user interface?
Yeah,
Right?
and
those are-
exploratory on top
So,
of it.
yeah, so, and that's, I think those two are kind of the first wave. One of the third wave items on there is reliability, scalability, the parafunctional stuff. So yes, it works when I do a functional test during the beta, but when I'm in Colorado on Verizon and there happens to be a really dry hot spell, it does something completely different. And that's the one that's going to nail you, because nobody could have predicted to call that out as a test scenario, and you couldn't have hired an outsourced person. You might have been able to instrument your app in order to say, okay, for this segment of users, in fact, Squim Points, Microsoft's software quality metrics, it's kind of like Watson, only you don't have to crash. Your app can be instrumented in a way of saving data points and sending it back to the mothership. So that's probably one of those tidal waves that can really nail.
That's outstanding. Thank you very much. I think we're ready for Joel.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So, quickly, just a little bit about me. I'm gonna slide that down. Yeah, and we'll just kind of use this as needed here. So I don't know. Maybe I'll just ask a quick question. So, show of hands, how many of you guys use Jira today at all?
Well, have used.
Have used. Okay, awesome. So one of the things that was really interesting in kind of my journey through Agile was learning Scrum, kind of building in XP, like everything that you guys have been talking about, right? Test-driven development. And somebody handed me a Scrum Bond book, and I started reading that. And it got me thinking, like, just like the journey of a story from start to finish, and where does the development and testing kind of cycle hit with that? And so I think one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I like talking about it, is kind of using, as a product manager, I want to see a story start from an idea, right, and then get a team together, especially QA, involved in that, the maturing of that story. And at different companies that I've been with, that's usually QA has generally the best insights from a business perspective, understanding exactly all the different things that are going to happen. And I know I'll draw this kind of small on the board, and many of you guys have probably seen this. But if this is how much money, right, it takes when you find a bug, and I've seen it written all sorts of time, but really requirements, right, is at the top. And I love when QA people are invested at this stage of the game. And Mario's here with me. I'm at Alaska Airlines right now, and we talk about this stuff all the time, right? How do we get QA folks involved in those meetings and contributing as we refine our backlog and groom our backlog? So the other thing, and I guess I'll draw that, right, the curve there, which it gets really expensive when you find issues with your logic or whatever you're thinking. But when one of the things that in the Scrumban, right, so how I think about things is very much Kanban, right? So I'll have either an idea or my boss will have 7 ideas, but they'll come in here, right? And then all I'm thinking about is how do I get this thing ready for a developer to start working on? And what was really neat, and the Scrumban kind of book goes into this a little bit, but it's everything here that I'm doing is trying to queue it up for the next team to work on, right? So if I'm doing my work and I maybe write a quick user story and do some little thinking about that, then it's okay, what's the next step, right? And it's really fun for me to work with the team to try to identify what they need, right? So developers, right, what's the definition of ready for them? Well, what's the definition of ready for a designer, right? So maybe there's a design stage here, right? And during the design stage, there is some stuff that they need to think about before they start working on it. Well, again, kind of tying it back to QA, right? If QA is at the very end of this cycle, then designers are designing something that is not even good, right? So I love bringing QA into this. And then the other thing that I've really enjoyed thinking about is with each of these, status or whatever, in Jira you can set this up, and I don't know how many of you guys use it right now. It looked like there was a lot of hands. In Jira, one of the kind of newer things that they've come out with is you can create multiple boards, right? So let's say this is a design board. You can create another board of a whole nother set of statuses. Let's say this is dev, right? And this thing here might be design done. Well, this can be the same status and column over here, so that as a designer, right, you're looking at your board and this is your board, and if I put something on their board that says, hey, this is ready for you to work on, here's some rough things. This can trigger a set of meetings, right, where we bring in that team, that cross-functional team together. And then as we move it through the process and the designers are ready for a review or whatever, right, that can trigger something. And then once it's done, then it just pops right on their board. And so now the developer's oh great, I have another thing that's ready for me to work on.